Hi, welcome to the sixth episode of Learning Basics of Krita as a digital painting and illustration application. After that quick hands on with donut painting using some basic tools, it's time we move on to learn new stuff. In this episode, we will learn about Transform tool. What is transformation in 2D lingo?
Autobots, transform!
Well, not exactly, but let's try to understand in a layman term. Once you have drawn something, you might want to make some changes which are more positional in nature. For example, you have drawn a face which is huge in size and you want to scale it down a bit, or maybe rotate it slightly. These kind of positional changes and some more advanced stuff is supported by Krita. We can divide this into two parts: basic transformation and advanced transformation. But before we learn this, let's understand how the transformation tool can be activated. By pressing Ctrl T or by pressing this icon on toolbar, transformation tool gets activated and by default tries to pick up the complete area where something is painted. Even if something is drawn apart, the tools try to cover the full area including the blank area. Again, this works per layer, which means it is going to affect the active layer only. Once you have it, there will be a rectangular box with 8 small boxes on the edges and one small crosshair in the middle. Now what all this means, we will get back to it later. Now if you want a very specific area to get transformed, we can easily do it. We will first need to use selection tool. For this piece, I will use my favorite selection tool, which is the free selection tool. You can revise about selection tool in our old video, which is also available in our playlist of Basics of Learning Krita. Draw the area you want to transform and press Ctrl T. Transform tool will be activated for selected region. Even though the transform tool shows a rectangle area, the selection is still as per our freehand drawing. Time to see what selection tool has to offer. We see some lines, some boxes across here, and this vast empty space in between and outside obviously. All these are significant to transform tool. Yes, even the empty space. And with these alone, we can cover the basics transform as discussed earlier. If you hover your pen or mouse in the empty region, the icon changes to cross. This now signifies that it has now become a move tool, and if you click and drag, you can move the selection. If you hover the mouse or pen outside the box, the cursor changes to rotation, which means now you can rotate the image. This is just a simple rotation on 2D plane, but if you press and hold Ctrl key, it can now use more axis to rotate the selection. Talking about rotation, the small crosshair in the middle is also very significant. This is more of a pivot point which we can grab and move with the mouse. It moves but nothing happens. The magic is here. If you try rotating again, the center of the rotation has now changed. Now these small boxes are to grab, and then you can see that clicking and dragging them scales the image, but it loses the aspect ratio. But if you click and hold Shift key and grab these, you can maintain the aspect ratio. Now these edges are also grabbable, and if you click and drag, you can see the shearing effect which deforms the selection in a perpendicular way. Okay, with this we have covered the basics of transformation, but let's not stop here and go ahead. Now this tool also offers much more transform manipulations. We have our transform tool selected and just right click, and now we have many more functions. These functions can be accessed from tool options also. Let's go one by one. By default, we are on the first option called free, and we have seen what we can do. Next option is perspective, and this is one wonderful feature to change the perspective of selected object. You can either correct perspective of existing drawing, or the best case scenario which digital artists use is to draw in front view, then use perspective selection to change its view. Makes drawing in perspective so much easier. The handles have 4 corners and you can change perspective. Next is warp tool. With this you can still change location, rotate it, but you have this grid through which you can change points and the image will warp. Kind of like liquify tool, but has better control. You can increase subdivision so that you have more granular control. Next is cage. This is similar to warp, but warp intends to modify from inside, but cage can envelop the whole thing and then you can modify it from the outside. This is something very similar to what 3D applications have to overall affect the model. Click outside the object and enclose it. The last click should be on the first point. Now you can manipulate the object. Next is liquify, and any Photoshop user will instantly recognize it. Instead of cage or mesh to change the painting, you can now use your pen or mouse to push the pixels. This probably is the biggest feature of Transform tool. Last is mesh. Even if this looks like cage tool, this has a very specific use. It can transform the paint like it is a 3D mesh, and you can wrap it around in any way you want. Best use are, suppose you have painted an arm or leg cloth but now need to add texture and design. Just paint the design in front perspective and then you can use this tool to warp around the slender shape. We will look at it when we go through our intermediate or advanced course. Okay guys, this is it. We have now covered the transform tool. Till we meet again in the next video.
Autobots, transform and roll out!